Hello friends, and welcome back to the Mothership. Sliders are my absolute favorite, and today I'm going to show you how to make maybe my favorite chorizo style Mexican slider burgers. Let's get started. Now the burger seasoning I use for these sliders is pretty heavily inspired by a chorizo. So I'm going to start out my seasonings with some paprika, ground cumin, chili powder, oregano, coriander, garlic powder, a little bit of cinnamon, and some kosher salt. And we can set this aside and get our meat together. For these sliders, I use a mix of beef and ground pork. Just like usual, I have a ton of leftover ground brisket, so I'm going with ground brisket. I give it a rough mix together to start, and then we can add in all of our dry seasoning. Then get this completely mixed together. Now, if you are using brisket and something fatty like a pork shoulder, you should have enough fat in there for everything to kind of stay together when needed. Obviously, you want to be able to make these into burgers or little balls that are going to be flattened. If for some reason you're using some leaner cuts, you could always add in like an egg or some other type of liquid that'll help everything kind of stick together a bit more. Since this is a chorizo style, a little bit of vinegar actually helps pretty well and kind of adds to that flavor. But I have enough fat, I don't think I'm going to need to add any sort of sticking agent. But before I turn these into nice little balls, I'm actually going to take them and I'm going to put this mix into the fridge and let it sit for a while, just to kind of let all the flavors kind of come together. Now, since these are Mexican style sliders, we got to make ourselves a nice pico. To do so, I'm just going to take about 2 tomatoes. I'm just roughly dice them up. Since they're sliders and not burgers, I'm actually going to try and do my tomatoes a little bit thinner than just diced. Now for an onion, I'm probably looking at using maybe a quarter, maybe a half, somewhere in here. Then we're going to want to get some cilantro nice and chopped up. If you don't like cilantro, you can obviously skip this step. I happen to really like cilantro, but some folks in my house do not, so I tend to not go as heavy on it as I would like to. Now the last thing we want to add in here is a jalapeno. This is an optional step. If you don't like jalapenos, feel free to skip this. We don't go super spicy, so I'm not going to do a ton, but you guys know how much jalapeno you like. Take half of it, take a quarter of it, take all of it. Obviously, to have less spice, you want to take out the seeds and the white membrane. And other than me manipulating my camera, this is one of the scenarios where I really like to wear gloves because we all know what it's like to get this stuff on in your eyeballs or anywhere else. So I'm going to thinly chop these up. Now all of our ingredients are going to go into a bowl. And then to this mixture, I'm going to add about 1/2 of a lime's worth of juice. And at this point, salt and pepper to taste. A little taste testy. Perfect. The last thing I make for these sliders before we start to actually hook them up is a cilantro lime crema. So I'm going to take a whole bunch of sour cream, a bunch of cilantro, about the juice of a lime, and then a garlic clove or 2. You can add some jalapeno in here if you want, and we're going to put salt and pepper towards the end. But let's just hit this with our tiny food processor, which, fun fact, I actually just ordered a new one. We just want the result to be a nice creamy type of substance. Basically, we're just gonna drizzle this on top of our burgers, and that looks about perfect to me. So now I'm just gonna add some salt and pepper to taste. Now there are a couple of different ways to actually cook our sliders. We can make little balls, flatten them, and then cook them like just tiny little burgers. But what we can also do, since our buns are going to be square shaped, since we're going King's Hawaiian, like almost all of my sliders, what we could do is we could just make one big rectangle, cook it as one, flip it on top of our buns, and then cut them afterwards. So basically, I'm going to make a rectangle about maybe a 1/2 inch larger than the diameter of our buns. Excuse me, the perimeter of our buns. And then we're going to cook it flat like that, flipping it over, probably use a couple of spatulas to get it done. And I'm going to do it on a skillet because if you're doing it on a grill with grill grates, it's a good chance it'll fall through. So we're going to cook it like that. I'm going to cut these in half, and then we're just going to plop it on top, put everything on there, and then cut them up afterwards. So let's get our meat nice and flattened together. Now, a nice little trick to transfer a whole bunch of meat like this, that's going to be fairly thin, is to just put down some saran wrap, put it on top of the saran wrap, and then just kind of lift it up with the saran wrap and transfer it over. Our goal here, like I said, is to get a little bit bigger than the perimeter. So I'm looking at maybe something like that. So I'm going to take our meat and just plop it on. And the goal here is just kind of flatten it out into a nice rectangle shape. It looks about right for me. It's not the prettiest, but it will get the job done. Just want to make sure that there's no real cracks that I can see right off the bat. And then get it kind of as flat across as possible. Now, if it breaks in half, that's fine. We can always cut it down the middle and do it in 2 pieces. That'll also work. But I think this is good to get onto the skillet. So let's preheat that sucker. I'm going to cook these, and we'll come back and assemble. Burgers are now cooked up, buns are toasted, and I have our burger onto our buns. I'm going to put some Mexican cheese blend on here. This is just whatever shredded nonsense comes from the store, because I didn't think I had to actually buy cheese and do it myself. I'm sorry. But get it nice and cheesed up. Perfect. Then we're going to take some of our Pico. Anything that is left over can end up going into nachos or whatever you want. We're probably going to have some chips with our meal. And then last but not least, cilantro lime crema can go nice and on top of it. Get it on there. Perfect. And then what I'm going to do is take the top of our buns, drop them on top, and this should all line up perfectly so we can just cut along the buns and have perfect sliders. So let's do this row right here. Perfect. Pull this aside. Oh my goodness. Now I think these suckers are probably ready to eat, guys. Now the smell on these suckers is absolutely incredible, and I've been dying to eat one of these since we started seasoning the meat hours and hours ago. They look so good right now. Just look at that. Oh my Lanta. We have a nice Hawaiian bun. We got some of our Pico, some Mexican cheese, a little bit of that crema, and then this meat mixture. Ooh, I can't wait to try it, guys. Time to give it the old chomp. That is so freaking good. Guys, this is one of my favorite sliders. You know I love sliders on this channel. I do sliders all the time. If it's going to be in a sandwich form, I'm probably going to make a miniature version of it so I can just chomp 100 of them. This is one of my favorites. This time around, the pork that I went with was a little bit leaner, and usually I go with a pork butt, but it's so good. The chorizo added onto that brisket really gives you a lot of fat from the brisket and then a lot of that chorizo flavoring from the pork. Super good. If you're a fan of cilantro, there's a ton of it in here. And you can dial up or down the amount of spice you want with the amount of jalapenos you put in here. Guys, I love this one. Please give this one a try. Let me know what your thoughts are. Am I out of my mind? Is this the best slider there is? I think it's pretty darn good. As always, guys, let me know your thoughts down below. And give me that YouTube jazz stuff. Comment, like, subscription, all that stuff. And most importantly, cook something fantastic, guys. I'll catch you on the next cook.